Have messages and papers from the mayor.
None.
Supplemental communication from city, county, and borough offices.
M244, Board of Elections appointment.
Received, ordered, printed, and filed.
Petitions and communications.
None.
Land use call-ups.
None.
Thank you. We will now have communication from Speaker Corey Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Negotiating the city's budget each year is one of the most important responsibilities of the City Council and one that I take very seriously. I have been proud to stand with my colleagues for the past 2 years and celebrate the victories that the City Council fought for and won on behalf of the people of our great city. Unfortunately, today is not a day of celebration. We are not in a time of celebration. It is a time of necessity. And today's budget agreement is one of necessity. These budget negotiations have reflected that fact. We knew how important this work was to New Yorkers. Our city has faced so much pain these last few months. On March 1st, New York City confirmed our first case of COVID-19. And since then, we have lost over 22,000 New Yorkers to the coronavirus. Millions of us were confined to our homes as many New Yorkers lost their jobs or watched their businesses fold. And we were left with a $9 billion revenue shortfall. Heart-wrenching, impossible choices had to be made. It was not easy. But collectively, the council was determined that even in the midst of the worst financial crisis anyone had ever seen, we would do our best to protect and preserve as many vital programs and services as we could for New Yorkers. We sought to address injustice and inequity. We asked ourselves, line by line, does this program support the social safety net? Does it address systemic inequality? And will it help communities hit hard in the pandemic recover from both COVID and the recession? It was deliberative, it was painstaking, and it was difficult work. But even in the midst of the worst economic crisis our city has faced in decades, we fought hard and we stuck to our principles. The City Council's budget negotiating team literally went line by line to find and save programs that never should have been cut in the mayor's executive budget. We fought for and managed to restore summer youth employment, Compass, Beacon, Cornerstone, Summer Camp, and other youth programs. That means more than 35,000 young people will get job training in just a couple of weeks for the summer, and at least 70,000 kids will go to summer camp this summer. I want to say we did this because investing in our young people is the right thing to do, and there's a lot of people to thank, but I especially want to thank our Majority Leader, Lori Cumbo, but even above her, and I love her, Councilmember Debbie Rose, the chair of our Youth Services Committee, has been unbelievable, literally day in and day out these last many months, fighting for every slot, every dollar, every detail. Debbie, you are just the best champion that youth in New York City have, and we wouldn't be at this agreement today, honestly, if it wasn't for you and the work you did with young people and advocates and how you pushed us and the administration to do more. So I want to thank you, Debbie, for everything you've done. We also restored social workers and guidance counselors to our schools, including the Single Shepherd Guidance Counselor Program, which was completely zeroed out in the city's budget, in the executive budget. And I'm especially proud that we fought for and won $100 million in restoration for fair student funding. Schools that need this money. It was zeroed out in the mayor's executive budget. We restored it $100 million. That will keep school budgets whole at possibly the worst and most challenging time in our city's history for educators, parents, and students. And I will not try to begin to describe what our BNT meetings have been like these last many weeks and months. But Mark Traeger is really a hero for school children in New York City. Fighting tooth and nail for fair student funding, fighting tooth and nail for the Single Shepherd program, which doesn't even affect his district, but affects children in central Brooklyn and the South Bronx, fighting tooth and nail for every education dollar we could come up with, not cutting classrooms or teachers, but actually finding savings in bus contracts and in regional offices and other things that we knew wouldn't affect school classrooms. Mark was there every step of the way, fighting, haggling, cajoling, screaming on behalf of the children in New York City. And so I want to thank you, Mark Traeger, for your leadership. You helped get us to this point tonight. The council also successfully fought to bolster our food pantry funding. Food insecurity is a problem even in times when our economy is strong. We have been through hell with COVID-19, and we know that more people than ever need help putting food on the table. And I want to thank Council Members Levin and Grudenchik, who have been fighting on these issues for food access for years. There is so much that we fought for and won that will help the city in this difficult time. I could literally go on, restoring money for Fair Futures for foster youth so that they have mentors and coaches, fully restoring the CUNY ASAP program. The mayor's budget sought to cut it by over $30 million. We fully restored CUNY ASAP, 100% restoration of the CUNY ASAP program. Libraries, we fought like hell to get libraries funded. Domestic violence programs, our initiatives for domestic violence, for sexual violence, saw no cuts, 0 cuts on Dove money, 0 cuts on the groups that help survivors, no cuts there. Margaret Chin, I can't begin to describe her advocacy for seniors. And there are some small cuts, but we were surgical, we were thoughtful in how we got there. We trimmed away things that we thought we could go without for the next year. And Margaret was fighting every step of the way for older adults in New York City. She was one of the most fantastic members of the budget negotiating team. I'm enormously grateful for her friendship. And Margaret, we are really grateful for you. Housing programs. We restored a lot of money that was cut in housing programs. There's still cuts that we don't like to HPD, especially on the capital side and some other things. But our chair, Robert Cornegie, and Councilmember Carlina Rivera were insistent in the budget negotiating team of protecting as many of these programs as possible, given that we know that New Yorkers are in a precarious situation in the coming months when the eviction moratorium might be up. That's why we need this federal help from Washington. These programs are programs that we have spent years building up in the council. And they are programs we need right now to help us move forward from COVID. We did not get the help that we needed from the feds. They haven't come through. We did not get help from the state. They actually cut us. So this has been an enormously challenging situation. In addition to dealing with the fallout from COVID-19, from our economy being in free fall, this budget was also negotiated while our city and our nation were dealing with the ramifications of another deadly disease, racism, generations and centuries of racism. On March 13th, Breonna Taylor was unarmed when she was killed by police officers in her own home in Louisville, Kentucky. On March 18th, Stephon Clark was unarmed when he was killed by police officers in his grandmother's backyard in Sacramento, California. And on March 25th, George Floyd was unarmed when he was killed, murdered by an officer kneeling on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while George Floyd begged for his life, yelling out for his mother. That is just a small number of the people that have been killed, unarmed Black people killed by police officers over the last many months and year. Millions of Americans of all races took to the streets and demanded a change to a system of policing that overwhelmingly targets Black and brown people. Many of my colleagues and I joined in some of these protests and were inspired by them. It is no secret that I was in favor of at least $1 billion in spending cuts from the NYPD. This budget does not include that level of cut for the NYPD. It contains an agreement to make some transformative changes at the department, though. We're taking school safety out of the NYPD, undoing a destructive policy put in place by then Mayor Rudy Giuliani. And we want to move it towards a community model, a model that talks with students and teachers and principals and parents and labor, a model that's about restorative justice, not about arresting our young people, not about having agents with handcuffs. We're removing the NYPD from homeless outreach. We're reducing the head count by well over 1,000 officers to create ongoing savings. These are real changes, and I stand by what we were able to accomplish. To everyone who is disappointed, and I know that there are many, many people who are disappointed that we could not go further, I'm disappointed as well. I wanted us to go deeper. I wanted us to take larger headcount reductions. I wanted a true hiring freeze. I wanted us to cancel additional classes. But this is a budget process that involves the mayor, who would not budge on these items, and 49 other council members currently, many of whom were not as supportive of the $1 billion and the kind of cuts that some of us were pushing for. This was an unprecedented budget, and there were many things that we had to protect. But I am proud of the changes that we secured, especially given the challenges we faced, given the $9 billion revenue shortfall. I do wish we had done more to cut the NYPD, but I also know this fight is not finished. This is the beginning. It was and is one of the honors of my life to work with my colleagues in this city council for the city that I love. We are going to reimagine policing in New York City, and we're not going to stop until we get there. I believe that we can rise to the great challenge of our time and create the kind of city we know New York can be, a just city, one that recognizes our past and fights like hell for a better, more equitable future. A New York that ends police brutality, school segregation, and housing discrimination. A New York that protects our most vulnerable and picks up our sisters and brothers who have fallen. That's the city I want. That's the New York that I believe in. So let's build it together. I will end by saying this has been a hard process. It's been a challenge for me to try to reach consensus. I have done my best. My best may not be enough for many New Yorkers. My best may not be enough for many council members. But I really do want you to know, New Yorkers who are listening, members that are on this call tonight, I did my best to reach consensus from what the budget negotiating team wanted, from what other members were comfortable with, and having a mayor that wouldn't budge on the additional cuts. We fought like hell to restore these programs. He wanted to wipe out education dollars, CUNY dollars, human and social services, single shepherd, and the list goes on. We got those programs restored. In the executive budget, they were at zero. And the only reason why they are being restored tonight is because of this body, is because of us coming together to fight those cuts. So there is a lot more work to do. We need help from the federal government. We need the billions of dollars in revenue replacement to get our city back on track. We need help from Albany. I believe we should raise taxes on the rich to create more revenue. And we need help from them on changing abusive policing as well. I wish we could go in and just fire cops right now that have a bad CCRB history, that should not be cops. But we cannot do that at this moment. We need changes at the state level to enable us to do that. We have an outdated, broken disciplinary system. We need to get rid of qualified immunity at the federal level. There's a lot we need to do. So I know tonight is the beginning, not the end. And I want you all to know that I look forward to standing with you as we push further, as we try to do better. I commit myself to doing that. And the last thing that I want to say before I turn it back to the majority leader, I am really grateful, more than I can describe, to every single Black member of the city council who have stepped up not even just since George Floyd was murdered. They were having these conversations and pushing these things before George Floyd was murdered. This conversation didn't start when George Floyd was murdered. And over the last many weeks, over the last 5 weeks since that murder in Minneapolis, our Black colleagues have inspired me. They have taught me a lot. I am really grateful for the leadership of the BLAC under chairs Danique Miller and Adrienne Adams. I am really grateful that we have been able to listen to our Black colleagues on what is important to them and to not get out in front of them, to not pretend like we know better than them, to not act like I know what's best for them and their constituents. So I am tremendously grateful for each and every one of them, not just for the work we've done during this budget, but the work that they do year round that many people don't know about. I want to continue to work with them, learn from them, listen to them, let them lead, step aside sometimes so they can be the ones doing that, because that is what this is about for me, listening to them. So I want to thank you all. Tonight's budget is not an easy budget. There are a lot of people who are not going to be happy, but I do believe we did the best we could. And I'm asking you all to support this budget because I do think it is the best we could do given the circumstances that we're in right now. Thank you very much. With that, Madam Majority Leader, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Speaker Corey Johnson, for your leadership, for recognizing the importance of consensus building, of hearing us out, for coming up with the best proposal and plan that you possibly could, given all of the dynamics of a very diverse body of 51 members of all races, nationalities, and religions. We appreciate your leadership and for hearing us. We will now move into discussion of general orders. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, or you can hold your comments to your vote in the upcoming moments.